In Lawrence, Kansas, a man has his hands and heart immersed in the soil, focusing on food security for those in need while upholding ancient growing traditions.
Well, I think it's most important that everyone not only just feel like everyone should have food, but ensure that everyone has food. If we were to really focus on our systems and make sure that the people who don't have food have it first, I mean, everything else would follow. Food is so tied into every part of our lives that, if everyone here was fed, the entire society would benefit from it and everyone would be in a better spot. We're here at Maseualkualli Farms in North Lawrence, Kansas. Maseualkualli Farms is a no-till, no-fossil fuel machine farm, primarily growing fruits and herbs. Maseualkualli Farms means the people's farms in Nahuatl, which is an indigenous Mexican language still spoken by over 1 million people. I really got into this work to do food security work and to do work for people who need food. It's one of the reasons I wanted to call it People's Farms. I want to get more people involved in agriculture. My cultural background is Mexican or Mexica. My great-grandfather came here from Guanajuato, Mexico in the early 1900s. So I've kind of traced that ancestry back. When he crossed the border with his brother, the Border Patrol people actually told him that, if he continued to speak any language other than English, his children's children would not have a good life here. And so part of naming things the way that I am is also reclamation work. So it's not only, crops that were ancestrally grown by the people where my great-grandfather came from, but also using the practices that were used then. So one of the projects that I've worked on is a no-till project that actually utilizes instructions from a codex from the 1500s that describes how to grow corn. And I did a USDA SARE research study on that already a couple years ago. And I still grow corn that way to this day. It's also about breeding seeds that will be more drought tolerant, more tolerant just generally to harsher environments than here. Also just being able to taste and feel a part of the life that I haven't yet experienced because of the nature of my kind of diaspora from Mexico. The corn that I'm growing is a variety of corn from Guanajuato. I've been selectively breeding it for about 3 years now. The seed actually came from one of the seed banks in Ames, Iowa, so one of the USDA seed banks. And I was able to get that from them for cultural research specifically. I sifted through thousands of accessions of corn to find that one specifically from where my great-grandfather is from. And I noticed on it, for thinking about climate change and we're thinking about inputs on farms, it's one of the varieties that in a really simplistic way actually produces this gel that has a bacterial symbiosis that fixes nitrogen from the air. So a lot of corn that we have today that has been completely bred out for the purposes of how long can it store, how much can it yield. But there's actually quite a few more ancient varieties that have this symbiotic relationship built into it. It's really important to grow the types of corn that pull atmospheric nitrogen out so that we reduce these nitrogen inputs, because those nitrogen inputs, which are often pumped way too heavily into them, become runoff that poisons our water. I do try and make a living off of the farm, and the other purpose to it is food security work. Food security is really important to me as someone who has been food insecure in my life. It's, something that between 12 to 14% of the population faces on a daily basis. It's something that we have not taken systemic approaches to actually do much about. There are programs, but if we look at statistical data the last 30 years, nothing much has changed. So food security work is extremely necessary from a systems approach so that we can actually make sure that everyone is fed properly. I would actually prefer to be called a food security worker or a food systems worker than a farmer. It's the work that I would really rather do. It's fun going to market and doing really fun, fancy things with restaurant chefs, but ultimately I'd like my career to become something that's much bigger than that, something that really is focused on helping people in need. I would like to accomplish what I'm calling food as a public work. that's where we actually start subsidizing the production of food versus solely subsidizing the consumption of food. Food as a Public Work would essentially be a public works program where the city and or county government would employ farmers to produce food just to feed people for the purpose of feeding people. I believe that food is a human right to way bigger extents than just making sure that people have 3 meals a day or enough calories in their diet. I believe that food security work is also making sure that people have culturally relevant foods. And that people are able to really have the diets that they choose for themselves and for their communities. So I'm very proud of my farm and all the local food systems workers here in Lawrence, Douglas County. There's a lot of us doing really, really important work, helping not only, sustain our families, but helping feed other people as well. And I think if more places were like this, and we had more people involved in agriculture overall, we'd have a lot brighter future for sure.
Let's go across the field to a plot of land dedicated to growing community support, knowledge, and awareness for local Indigenous people.
So we're in the same farm plot as Maseualkualli Farms. We are a sister farm. We are the Indigenous Community Center, and we are focusing on food sovereignty. Food sovereignty is important because it connects us to where our food comes from. Learning how to cultivate medicine with the earth and feeding our soul and our communities is very important. So I am from the Ohlone Costanoan Esalen Nation out of California. To me, it's extremely vital to get our community, our Indigenous communities back to the earth, back to eating healthy after being colonized. My tribe was taken over by the Spaniards, so we are actually considered mission Indians. And any native group in this country was colonized into a way of eating government food. Government food was absolutely the lowest quality and created a lot of health problems that Indigenous people didn't have before. So the importance of this farm and food sovereignty is to get our people back to the ways of our ancestors. The Indigenous Community Center, otherwise known as ICC, started because there is a real need to create space for Indigenous people to come together and connect and heal and rebuild community and share stories and storytelling and a lot of traditional things that, otherwise we would miss. This plot of land is the foundation of creating that space. It's bringing us back to Indigenous ways of growing, of farming. A lot of farming mentality has been colonized in a way where it's all about production, where here we really focus on the importance of community and togetherness and the medicine that we share when we're working together, and that is vital for communities to heal. We are on an acre plot, and we have a huge variety of fruits and vegetables that we're growing, a lot of herbs too. The idea of our farm is to create a pay-as-you-go system for BIPOC communities who might not have the funds to buy organically at the local farmers market, or our elders who aren't being able to get out to buy fresh produce. Along with the Food Sovereignty Garden, Indigenous Community Center has created a Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women or Person chapter. We're the second chapter in the state of Kansas to be established. We also started an Indigenous skate team, and the idea of that was creating space for our youth to come together and feel like they belong, feel like they're connected, give them more of a community of their own that understands them, but with the support of the center to kind of create a safe space for that. The ICC wants to create a space where anybody can get involved and become part of the healing process. I personally think with the work that I'm doing, I am not only finding peace within myself, I am learning about other cultures. I'm learning that it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to learn how to support other entities from throughout the world, from different countries. And I encourage everybody to do the same. Look within their own communities. Look up what kind of native land you are on, because all of this land is native. This hat, You Are on Native Land, is a reminder. Anybody who sees it kind of just stops them in their tracks and makes them remember. And even if it's just a double take or they ask questions about it, it's just a reminder of what this country was truly built on.